عملت لك ايه؟ ده كانت عاوزه تضرب القمر بعدها بشويه بس ده كانت هتضرب.
Okay, welcome back. Okay, we stopped at the formative assessment. So if you have any questions about the formative assessment, also called assessment for learning, because the main purpose here is to identify students' current level and to take steps towards their learning, not to stop here, okay? So the main point here, it's not to judge their performance, to improve their performance, okay? And check, yes, that's right. As you said, Noha, check their level and how can you improve and develop their skills. Yes, exactly. Okay. I'd like Alia to speak about her point of view. Okay, I'll share the screen. Okay, so again, do you have any questions about formative assessment? And what do we mean by formative assessment? Okay, so let's go to the third one, summative assessment. Summative, it happened after or at the end of the learning experience. As you said, Miss Noah, at the end of a unit, not during learning, after or at the end of a period of study. And the main purpose here is to identify what students have learned. Have they achieved the learning objectives or not? Okay, usually used to have a grade. So when we have a test on unit 1, a test on unit 3, so this is summative assessment, okay? And it's called assessment of learning. So I check what my students learned or have learned. Have they achieved the learning objectives or not, okay? And it's a kind of judgment. Why? Because here I have a grade. Here I have a grade. So I can say that my students here have A+ or B or C, or they have 40 out of 50. So here it's supposed to give my students a grade. So this is summative. And this is what we have do with our students at the end of each unit. We have a test on unit 1, a test on unit 2, okay? So I check what my students have learned. It's supposed to give them a grade, and here it's judgmental because I give my students a grade, okay? This is summative assessment. So it's all about learning objectives. I check that, have my students achieved the learning objectives or not, okay? It comes at the end, not during learning, at the end. And here I can give my students a grade, so it's a kind of judgment, not a purpose, okay? Not a purpose like formative assessment. So any questions so far about the types of assessment? Again, so here we have 3 types of assessment. Number 1, diagnostic. It's before the learning experience. It can be before explaining a lesson or beginning a unit. Here I check what my students have already known and what they can do, what they know, okay? And after that, we have formative assessment. It occurs during learning. It's ongoing, continuous, okay? And it's supposed to not be graded because it's not judgmental. It's a kind of feedback and reflection, what happened. Yes, that's right, Nabila. She said, I think it's a way for the teacher to know how students reach to the purpose of the, yeah, that's right. So here I have a learning objective. How can I achieve this learning objective? Through using formative assessment. Yes, that's right. Yeah, thank you, Nabila. Yes, that's right. This is for formative assessment. Summative at the end, okay? Because it provided the last, what we have already done, okay? So here I give my students a grade and it's judgmental. At the end of a unit, for example, I have a test or exam and I can identify what my students have learned, okay? So what is really helpful to achieve our learning objectives is the formative assessment, because after that, I take an action. So what should I do to improve my students' performance or skills to help them or to support them to achieve the learning objectives, okay? And what I can do after finishing the unit, for example, I can have a test, and if I give them a grade, so this is judgmental because I judge their performance, okay? So this is the difference between diagnostic, formative, and summative. 3 types of assessment, okay? Okay, any questions so far? Alia, if you want to complete your point of view and you can't use the mic, you can type in the chat box, okay? Okay, so these are the 3 types of assessment. And here there is a lovely comparison between summative and formative. What's the difference between summative and formative? And they said that summative, at the end of the learning, it looks like a snapshot, okay? It looks like a picture here. The first one, summative. I'm talking about the summative. A picture of what a student knows that is captured in a single moment of time. Again, the summative, what happened at the end of learning, it looks like a snapshot. It looks like a picture captured at a certain moment. So when I give my students at the end of the year a test, I can identify what they have learned, but this has happened in this point, in this moment, okay? So it looks like a snapshot. What about formative? It's continuous, okay? And it's ongoing. It looks like a video, a streaming video. So it's a moving picture that demonstrates active student thinking and reasoning. So it can give me continuous picture of the student's level, not a snapshot. Okay, can you imagine the difference between formative and summative?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so Noha said, if I want to know what students know, it happened through diagnostic. Students know it. I can't get your point, Noha. Could you please explain that or type it again? You ask about the diagnostic assessment. Okay, diagnostic assessment is a kind of assessment that I can carry it out with my students before, yeah, to check their schemata, their previous knowledge, prior knowledge. Yes, yeah, that's right. Yes, exactly, to check their knowledge and identify my starting point. Where should I start? Yes, exactly. This is diagnostic assessment. Yes, exactly. So formative assessment is ongoing process, okay, but summative, it's not ongoing. At the end, you have a test or an exam and you have a grade and that's it, okay? And we judge the students' performance. But formative, I can provide them with feedback, I can reflect on their performance and give them or provide them with extra help or support to improve their performance, okay?
So we judge at the summative assessment.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's judgmental. Yes.
But we give feedbacks and
Reflection.
to students at and the observations through while the formative assessment.
Exactly.
The
Yes.
formative period.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, exactly. Yes, that's the point. Okay. So this is the difference between formative and summative. Okay. Okay.
Wow.
Let's have a look at an example of diagnostic assessment. As we said, we have a diagnostic assessment before learning to check their knowledge, my students' knowledge, okay? So here we have an example of diagnostic assessment, which is a unit pre-test. Can you guess what is a unit pre-test?
I think this is such as when we are going to have a course, they making a replacement test for us.
Yes.
This is a replacement test or to know which level are the students.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, placement test, it's a test that,
to determine,
yeah, that's right.
yes,
Help.
to determine their current level.
Exactly, yes. It helps the examiner to identify which level it supposes the students or the learner should have. Yeah, exactly, Raghda. When we have a course, as you said, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So when we have a course and I'd like to identify which level students should have, of course, if the course is may have more than one level. So it's supposed to know which level is suitable for the students through placement test. Yeah, that's right. And because we, in our curriculum, we don't have levels, we have a textbook and it consists of units. And it's supposed, if I wanted to have a diagnostic assessment, it's different from placement test because it's not here about the levels of a course. Okay, for example, I have a course, its name is face-to-face. It has 12 levels. So if the learner have a placement test, I can choose the suitable level for him or her. So it can be level 5, level 4, and level 6. Yes, this is placement test. But here I'm talking about, I'm teaching a unit. For example, this unit, it's about holidays. The grammar here, it's about past simple tense, for example. And I'd like to do a diagnostic assessment with my students, okay? So can you imagine when I tell my students, we will have a diagnostic test about this unit. Can you imagine what is the assessment here? What can it look like?
We can make an assessment about their vocabulary of this unit.
Exactly,
Their
yes.
learned vocabulary.
Yeah, that's right. So I can have a test to check how much vocabulary they have already known. Yeah, to check their knowledge, as I think Miss Noha said, to check their knowledge and their level. Exactly. So the pre-test, it's supposed to carry out before starting a lesson or a unit like this example. And here I'd like to identify how much knowledge my students already know, okay? And it's supposed to be MCQ questions, fill in the gaps, multiple choice questions. It will be easy to check, easy for the teacher to check. And the unit pretest, it's supposed to focus on the main or the core concept of the unit, or the main vocabulary, as you said, Rauda, the main structures or the main vocab. So I'd like my students to achieve certain objectives at the end of the unit. So it's supposed to give them a test or an exam that assess these learning objectives, okay? And according to this unit pretest, it's supposed to identify my starting point, because through this unit pretest, I can check their prior knowledge or their schemata or their knowledge, as you said, Ms. Noha, okay? So this diagnostic assessment, it's a tool that students use to check their, or the students' prior knowledge, their knowledge, what they know, what they can do, and identify the starting point. Where should I start with my students? When I teach this unit, okay? So in this test or this exam, I can include the main or the very important concept of the unit and check, do my students really know these concepts or not, okay? And after that, I can explain, I can identify where should I start, okay? So this is a pre-test or a unit pre-test, okay? Diagnostic assessment. Okay, any questions so far? Any questions? Okay, let's move to the next point, which is examples of formative assessment. Okay, and this is what is really important and the main point in our session today. Examples of formative assessment. What the teacher should do to use the tools of formative assessment. Asking comprehension question to check their understanding, because formative assessment, it's all about checking the students' understanding, current level, okay? Grammar or vocabulary exercises, per work and group work, students' presentation, and frequent checks for understanding. And this is really what I'm talking about. I'll talk about now. Frequent checks of understanding. How can I check my students' understanding while teaching them? Okay, so I'm teaching them a lesson, and in each period I try to check they are following me and they are understanding what I'm teaching to achieve the learning objectives. So this is what I focus on. Frequent checks of or for understanding. Okay, so while teaching your students in the classroom, what tools or what strategies do you do to check that your students are following, your students do understand you in the lesson and can follow you, okay? And in this point, you can say, yes, my students achieve the learning objectives. So can you tell me what you do in your classroom to check your students' understanding?
Ask them to give examples.
To give examples. Yeah, after giving examples, how can you check that your students get the point and they can understand you or can follow you in the lesson?
Through exercises. For example, when we have a grammar lesson, we at the practice period or at the practice time, we are going to make sure that our students have learned and they are can use the piece of grammar or the key structure well. So we do this through exercises and comprehension questions.
Exactly. So asking comprehension questions, Raghda uses comprehension questions. If you remember concept checking questions to check
Yes.
our
Yes.
students' understanding. And as you said, the grammar and vocabulary exercise. Yes, when my students did the exercises well, not perfectly, they can do well, and I can give them after that some support and some help. Yeah, that's right, Raghda. So these are tools to do formative assessment, yes, but I'm talking about certain point here, which is checks for understanding. I'm teaching, I'm explaining, and I'd like to check that my students are following me and understanding what I'm talking about. Yes, as you said, through exercises and asking,
Yes.
checking questions, yes. So what other strategies do you use in your classroom to check that your students can understand you?
As we learned in the previous session, you learned us a technique which is or a game which is two true and one false, or two truths and one fib, or like this.
Yeah,
I
two
think
truths and
that's
a lie. One lie.
two truths and a lie. So
Yes.
we can do this. This is also a way of assessing their understanding or checking their understanding.
Exactly, yes. Yes, I can do.
Especially when we are working out a grammar piece of grammar, or a reading text. We can in the reading text or in the reading lesson, we check their understanding or their knowledge or their comprehension through the reading comprehension questions.
Exactly, yes. Yes, I can use this strategy. Yes, as you said, in grammar lesson or reading lesson, I can invite my students to write 3 sentences. 2 of them are true, and the third one is false. They can read these sentences aloud, of course, individually or in groups, and the other students can identify which one is a lie. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yes. Who else? Who can tell me what's your strategy or favorite strategy to check your students' understanding?
Strategies in the speaking lessons, we are going to talk about a certain subject, so they are going to work in pairs to talk about their interests or their hobby or their for example, in the conversation lessons, so they are going to be in pairs.
Yes. Yeah.
To work in pairs.
Yeah. So they work in.
I think this depends on the type of the lesson or the nature of the lesson.
Yeah, of course, yes. Per work, yes, and group work also is a tool of formative assessment. Yes, and as you said, Raghda, in the speaking lessons, I can personalize the topic, and I can invite my students to speak about the topic related to their own life. Yes, exactly. This is a good way to do formative assessment. Yes. Okay. Okay. Does anyone want to add anything? If you want to share anything that you do in your classroom to check.
By using the rule, ask them to talk about themselves by using the rule.
Yes, I'm trying to guess who is speaking because the name is not clear. Asma? Asma is speaking?
Safa,
yes. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Safa. Yes. Yes, you are right. When students role play the conversation, yeah, I can check that they got the point, or they, as you said, Raghda, it's all about the learning objective or the lesson that I'm teaching. Yes, so it's all about what I'm working on. So I can check, yes, my students get the point or not. Role play or act out the conversation or the dialogue. Yes, it's a way of formative assessment. Exactly. Okay. Here I have some ideas of about tools of checking understanding of formative assessment. Let's check them. And I think you have already used some of them. Here are tools for formative assessment or techniques to check for understanding: whiteboards, hand signal, ice cream stick method, exit ticket, parking lot, and traffic lights. Okay, I think you are familiar with some of them. So if you have already used some of them, you can tell me. Whiteboards, hand signals, ice cream stick method, exit ticket, parking lot, traffic light. So tell me which one you have used.
Whiteboard.
Whiteboard? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Manar? I think Manar is speaking. Okay, can you explain for us how can you use whiteboards? Okay, Safa, can you explain how can you use whiteboards? Okay, I can't identify who was speaking. Okay, let's check the chat box. Ice cream stick, Miss Noha. Okay, can you explain for us, Miss Noha, how can you use the ice cream stick? Okay. Yes, go ahead. Unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Miss Noha, unmute yourself. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I use the ice cream sticks method to write the names of my students on each stick.
Yes.
And if I want to ask a question, I pull one of them and read the name. After that, I pulled my student to answer my question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Did you use it with the young learners?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
How can you see this way or this tool? Okay. Did it work out?
Yeah, suitable for my student and as for me as English teacher and my and our Arabic teacher and our math teacher use this way.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you.
We also in our classes use this way with our students.
Thank you, Miss Noha. Ice cream stick method. I used it before. It's supposed to bring the sticks of ice cream and write the names of your students, put all of them in a jar or in a cup. And when you want to ask a question, you just choose a stick and say the name of the students. It's supposed all of the students pay attention because they know you can ask them anytime. So they pay attention and you ask the question to this.
To hear their names.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they answer in turn, and using this way, you can check their understanding. If you want to check that X can understand the lesson or can answer the question, so you can choose randomly, of course.
Yeah.
Choosing the names randomly. Yes. So I really like this way. Thank you, Ms. Noha, for sharing. Raghda, you raised your hand.
Yes, I can agree with you all because I already used the ice cream stick method for my children at grade 6. It helped me a lot in the class management because it was a large class and they were making a lot of noisy. So it helped me to set a discipline for my students. And it has a kind of surprise.
Yes.
Surprise for the students. They are not expected who is going to answer or to say. So they grabbed their attention and it made them more concentrated.
Exactly, I agree with you. And yes, it's a way to manage your classroom because
For the whiteboards, we learned with you at our early days of training a technique using whiteboards for the students to write quickly their answers.
exactly.
We made it with an empty file and they put blank paper in it and they write with their own markers on the files their answer quickly and they hang their answer. So it helped us in the dictation for the young learners.
Yes.
And it was helpful.
Yes, thank you, Raghda, for sharing. Yes, I agree with you that the ice cream stick method helps us to control and manage our classroom, especially when we have large number, okay? So when I use the ice cream stick method, students stop raising their hands and say, yes, miss, I wanted to answer. So we have come classroom and the students can't guess when I can answer the question because I have the names randomly. Exactly, yes, this is another point. And whiteboard, this is number 1 here in our list. Okay, and I'll share it with on the screen now. So this is the whiteboard. Okay, it's all about a file, plastic file, and you can put a sheet of paper, and each student can have one. Each student can have his or her own whiteboard. And when I wanted to ask a question to check their understanding, they just write down their answer and hold it up to show me the answer. It's really a quick way to check that your students understand and follow you. Just ask them a question, ask them to write down their answer and hold it up. And in a minute, you can look over or look through the classroom and check that your students have the right answer or not, okay? So here, students can do that individually or in pairs or in groups, okay? If you want to make it individually, so each student can have his or his own whiteboard and it's easily erased. They can erase because it's plastic. So they can erase the answer and use it again and again. It's really quickly and save time. It saves time. Okay, this is number 1, whiteboard. Okay, you can do it yourself or your students can make it themselves. It's a plastic file and a sheet of paper, that's it, okay? They can use a whiteboard marker because it's easy to erase. And you can use it, it really saves the time. Just ask your students a question and they write the answer, they hold it up, and you can tell them the faster is the winner to make them motivated. Okay, so this is whiteboard. Okay, this is number 1. Let's move to number 2. Tool number 2, hand signal. Thumbs up or thumbs down or number of fingers. Okay, so how can I use hand signals to check their understanding? I'll give you some examples. When I explain phonics lesson, for example, I teach certain sound. For example, long E. So I say a list of words one by one, and the students listen carefully. If the word has long E, they have to thumbs up. If it doesn't have long E, they have to sum down, okay? So it's non-verbal way to quickly check that students get the point, okay? So again, you can say a sentence, and according to what you want students to do, they can sums up and sums down. Number of fingers, for example, if they show just one finger, so they need help. They don't know the answer of the question, for example. Number two, if they hold up two fingers, so they are not sure about the answer, or I may need help. If they hold up three fingers, so it's okay, I know the answer, or I can get the point. And of course, you can change the numbers of fingers. You can continue till 4 and 5, okay? So it's all about you. You can tell your students, I'm asking you a question. If you are sure, so raise 3 fingers. If you are not sure, raise 2 fingers. If you need help and you don't know the answer of the question, you raise just 1 finger. And you can, after that, check their answers, okay? So this is for hand signals. So using hand signals is, again, a quick way, and it's helpful to check their understanding, okay? Sums up and sums down, for example, if you teach a grammar lesson, so you can say sentences one by one, students listen, and if the sentence is true, they can sums up. If the sentence is wrong, they can sums down, okay? So it's up to you. How can you use it in the lesson? Okay, so this is hand signals. In fact, I use the same thing with my students, but by clapping their hand and stamping their feet. I love it so much. It's also a non-verbal way to check their understanding, and I usually use it in phonics lesson. If the word has a target sound, they can clap their hands. If it doesn't have, they stamp their feet. They have a lot of fun, and you can easily identify which students can't get the point. And it's very easy and simple. It's a fast way to check their understanding using hand signals, okay? Okay, if you have another way to use hand signal, you can tell us. Exactly, Raghda, it's really effective in teaching stress and intonation. Yeah, that's right. So for example, if you want to explain, it's okay. If you want to explain it. Raghda, go ahead.
Yeah. So as you taught us that when we are teaching a lesson about stress, we can use our hands to clap when we listen to the stressed syllable. And in the intonation also, we can use our hands to show the falling and rising tones of the speech.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. So you can say words in turn, and the students can clap according to the number of stress, the number of syllables, sorry, the number of syllables, or as you say, it's really a quick way, and the students get engaged because you don't have to speak, just to show their hand according to your instructions. Thank you, Raghda. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is number 2. Number 3, and Miss Noha and Raghda and me, in fact, use this way, engaging with the Bobskill or ice cream. Bobskill or ice cream. Yeah. Engaging with the Bobskill stick method, writing the names of your students on ice cream stick, and while you want